start off by talking about the origin of this particular movie? How did this idea come to you?
Well, before this one, we made a movie called The House of the Devil. We stayed at this hotel. It's the Yankee Peddler is what it's called. It's in Torrington, Connecticut. And we stayed there because it was cheap. And it was about 30 minutes away from where we were shooting House of the Devil. And I keep always saying that, you know, we would just drive 30 minutes a day to shoot this satanic horror movie, but weirder stuff was happening back at the hotel where the crew was staying. And yeah, I mean, it has this kind of funky history to it, and it's sort of this weird mixture of like 1800s historic architecture and bad 70s renovation. So there's this weird charmingness to it, and everyone that works there is in their 20s and they don't care, and like it's just like it's a really kind of amazing but also awful place. And so all this weird haunted stuff happened. I'm pretty much a skeptic, so I don't believe in a lot of that stuff, but everyone else became very convinced, and the town itself loves to tell you about how haunted the Yankee Peddler is. So I, you know, out of some weird situation where I was trying to think of another movie to make, I knew the people that paid for House of the Devil would pay for another film with me, and so I just thought, what if we went back to the Peddler and made a movie there about the Peddler? And everyone that worked in House of the Devil was like, we're not going back to the Peddler. We don't want to do that. We already spent too much time in Torrington. But of course I wrote it anyway, and the whole thing was like, if the Peddler had said no, we would have never made the movie, because I didn't want to adapt it for somewhere else. To me, it only made sense to make it there. And they said yes, and we had a very short window to shoot it, because their busy season starts in May, and they have a lot of weddings there. So we had like the end of March and April, and that was it. So we had this like one chance to make the movie, which was great because it kind of put pressure on everybody to have to make it, because I wrote it around Christmas time, and I got the okay in the end of January. So we really just had to like go. And I like that, and everyone I work with likes that, because it's like less time to like worry about things, and you just kind of you go and you deal with it as you go. So it came together very quickly. It was a very strange kind of personal movie that way.
Anybody have any questions out there? Yeah, right there.
Did Kill the Ghost you have her in mind, or did she audition for the role, or?
No, I did not have her in mind. The way she came apart is that the producers had made another movie called Stakeland the year before, and I keep telling this story, but I thought for sure that casting that role was going to be just a cakewalk. Like I was like, oh, this is, yes, everyone's going to want to do this. Every older actress is going to come running. They're running to do my film because look at all that they get to do. And what I didn't realize is that older actresses have zero sense of humor about being older actresses. And they all were like completely offended that I even offered them the role. So we kind of had to take a step back and like regroup. And so, you know, we were approaching all these people, and we kept running into this wall where people would be like, I love the movie, but I want you to change all this stuff. I don't want anyone to say anything bad about my character. I don't want to have been an actress. I want to be something else. And I was just like, no. Like, no. Like, this is not what the movie is. And so then Kelly came up because of Stakeland. They recommended her. And she was in London, and we Skyped. And I remember because when we got on Skype, she was smoking a cigarette via Skype, which was kind of weird. But she was like smoking a cigarette, and I was like, you know, it's not. I want to make sure you don't think that we're, you know, making fun of anything, because this character, she's not a failed actress. She's just moving on in life. She's found something else. And Kelly was just like, I don't give a shit about any of that stuff. And she had this great sense of humor about it. And because of that, I think her and myself and Pat and Sarah, like we all had a good self-deprecating sense of humor, which is a lot of what the movie was. And she was someone who was not precious about that and was able to take it seriously, but also kind of poke fun at it a little bit. And so it just sort of worked out in the end as it does.
Anyone else? Yeah.
So what was the freaky stuff that was happening that inspired the movie?
Well, you know, okay, so these are the things I can say that happened to me, but you know, all right, so I stayed in one room, and the phone would ring, and no one would be on the other end, which is weird because you have to call through the front desk. Maybe they were planning a prank on me, I don't know. A lot of times doors would open and close, but it's an old building, so, you know, it's the kind of place you open a door at one end and another one closes. Light bulbs would sort of always burn out, TV would turn off and on by itself, but you know, it's a weird old place and stuff like that. The one thing I can say, two things that I feel are interesting about the Peddler is that there's just a vibe. And it's a really weird vibe, like I'm staying at the Embassy Suites right now and I have no vibe at all. But the vibe at the Yankee Peddler is like, something is unsettling about it, and you have very vivid dreams there, which is not just me one time. It's like every night, everybody that stays there has very vivid dreams. I don't know why that is, but it happens. It happened when we made House of the Devil, and when we came back, it happened again. And then the only thing that I find is a really kind of good coincidence story is that the room that the old man is in this film, that's like the honeymoon suite. That's the room that we use as our haunted room. The only reason I picked that as the haunted room is because I needed a room at the end of a hallway, and I needed a room that was big enough, and that room was 2 rooms, so I could do this sort of dolly shot that I want to do. I picked it for no other reason other than purely technical reasons. So we go ahead and make the movie, and as we're wrapping out, I find out like the most haunted room in the hotel is that room. So it's, but it's weird that like the room that I picked for only technical reasons to be our haunted room happens to be, of all the rooms in the hotel, the actual haunted room. So I don't know. Other people will tell you other things, but that's the kind of stuff that I experienced.
Yep.
I got a huge Ghostbusters vibe from the beginning from the visuals and the music itself. I was wondering, when you wrote it, did you write it strictly with horror in mind and then decide, hey, I want to add some comedy to this, or did it go naturally?
It was always meant to be kind of a quirky movie. The last movie that I made was such like a kind of a downer. Like it was about like a broke girl dealing with this bad situation, and then it gets worse. And it was just sort of like, I wanted to make something that was more upbeat and more fun. And we kept joking it's like a hard PG. Like we wanted it to be like, it's this sort of quasi-family movie vibe. So that was always there. I think it became funnier once I realized what I could exploit Sarah Paxton for. Like I realized how goofy she could be. So I think I pushed that further. But it was always this very kind of snarky, quirky, dry comedy. And to some degree, Ghostbusters was the influence. I mean, I wouldn't say it's an influence, but it's certainly the vibe of that movie, being that it's like not scary, but also scary. But like I think one reference point I did give people was the opening scene of Ghostbusters, where like the opening scene is actually kind of scary, and that was sort of what we were going for, where it was like it's a friendly, scary vibe, which is surprisingly difficult to navigate because you quickly go one way or the other. It's a very fine line.
Yeah.
Who did your score, and did you work with them before?
Yes, Jeff Grace did the score. He's done every film that I've done. So, and Graham Resnick, the sound designer, same thing. So we're just kind of like we gear up, do films every year.
Anyone else? Yeah.
Loving your work so far. Wondering if you know what's next.
I have a science fiction film that's very likely, and I have a werewolf movie that's very likely. I don't know which one will happen first, or the way it usually goes is it will be neither of those. But those are both ready with producers raring to go, allegedly about to happen, is what I've been told on several occasions. I'd be happy to make either one of them or both.
And you are working on a new project that is somewhat connected to the Alamo.
Yes, I also am going to do a segment in this anthology thing called the ABCs of Death, that I'm sure many of you are aware of, which is 26 filmmakers get together and I guess do different deaths for every letter of the alphabet. So I'm going to do one of those as well, and hopefully we'll be back here with that next year.
Yeah, back there.
Got a question about the story.
Sure.
So in the movie, the older woman was holding the pendant. She said there was 3 people.
Yes.
Who were they?
Well, see, here's the thing with this question, because it comes up occasionally. It's a situation that I'm in now where it's like, where I could just tell you, but then it kind of is a downer. And so the other night when we had the Fantastic screening, someone asked, and I offered it to the audience. I was like, well, do you want to know, or do you want to sort of go home and think about it, try to, or see it again? And there was a resounding no that nobody wanted to know from the audience. So I'm not going to offer it up again. I'm just going to stick with that result because it's better for me. But it's a little ambiguous, but at the same time it's not. And I think you'll probably go, oh, right. Or you could just bug somebody here afterwards.
Was one of them that the guy who killed himself was his wife?
No.
Was there a question over here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you said this film. I think this film is kind of a downer because the person you like the most dies at the end. Were you ever tempted to not do that ending?
No, because I felt like any ghost story has to have tragedy. Otherwise, it's sort of irrelevant to be a ghost story. But I do remember Elliot Rocket, the DP, looking at me at one point being like, man, they're going to be bummed when she dies. But it was always, I mean, that was, the thing is, it was trying to charm you into it so much that you would be actually affected by the fact that these people were in danger because they don't it was very important to me to make a movie about characters who don't belong in our movie. You know, they belonged in their kind of quirky romantic comedy, and then it just got sidelined into this ghost story. And I wanted to kind of keep that up throughout, so you really, as an audience, you sort of lose your comfort level of being like, well, I don't know how these people deal with these situations, because I'm used to more like movie-ish characters dealing with them. So I did want to kind of charm you into thinking that nothing bad could happen to Sarah Paxton, and then kind of, I guess, bum everybody out by killing her.
Sure.
Yeah. Mission accomplished. Yeah.
In the most insignificant question yet, what was her button that she was wearing on her hoodie?
Oh, it said, what did it say? It said something like, I think it was like it's been a long time. I think it was a pill. She'd be the one to ask. But I think it was a pill and it said, fuck it all. I think that's what it said. But it's been a long time, but I'm pretty sure that's what it was. It could have been a band, but I don't think so. I think that's what it was. Because it was red and blue, and we try to keep with that vibe.
Maybe a couple more questions. Anyone else? Yeah.
So with House of the Devil and this one, because I haven't seen your first one, unfortunately, but they're both so heavily horror influenced, and you said a minute ago that you're kind of a skeptic. What draws you to this genre, and like why? Because you're awesome at it, but what draws you to it?
I don't know. Maybe being a skeptic makes it more appealing, like it's some sort of effort to. But I don't really know. I think I've always just had a bit of a morbid curiosity and a morbid sense of humor, and I've always been sort of attracted to things that are like taboo or you're not supposed to. You know, I told this story the other day that growing up at the video store, like the horror section was one step above the porn section. Like you weren't really supposed to be over there, and of course that just made me navigate to it even more. So I don't know. I think I've always been interested in that, and horror not so much anymore because now it's very mainstream and it's probably as mainstream as movies can get right now. It's like the goal to be commercial is to make a horror movie and then get a big movie. But it didn't used to be like that. It used to be like a counterculture, and it used to be like the sort of like punk rock of movies. And I always just found that really appealing, and I found it like you never quite knew what you were going to get. You know, you would look at a box cover and it would promise you one thing and you weren't quite sure. And it was always kind of daring you, like you won't be able to handle this. So it was an element of like sort of pushing myself, I think. Not that my movies really fit into that sort of extreme category, but I think that's what initially drew me to it, is the sort of like you're not supposed to, know about this stuff. But I don't know. I think maybe I'm just like a dark person. I think I'm a light-hearted, funny person, but I might also, be a bit grim.
So, I'm curious how Sarah Paxton actually got involved with this. This is way off course from what she had done in the past.
Well, Sarah, and it's funny, I wasn't very familiar with Sarah, and she came through an agent suggested her, and I wasn't very familiar with her, but she was acting in a film in New York with a friend of mine. So I called my friend and I said, what do you think of this girl, Sarah Paxton? And my friend went on and on about how great she was. So that, in a way, was sort of enough for me. And then we got on the phone. She really liked the script. She really understood the script. We got along very well, and then I met her, and she was absolutely not what I expected. This is much more like Sarah Paxton in real life than you would think. And she would joke, and she'd be like, because I didn't know who she was, but every 18-year-old girl or younger in Torrington, Connecticut, like, it was amazing. It was like we had Tom Cruise. Like, they were just like, oh my God, it's Sarah Paxton, what are you? They would freak out. And I was like, what do they know? And she said, well, they either know me from the Mermaid movie or the Ass Rape movie. So I was like, well, now they'll know you from the, I guess, Haunted Nerd Hotel movie. But yeah, I think this character is once I kind of got to know Sarah, I really sort of tried to exploit a lot of her, like, actual Sarah Paxtonisms into the movie and let her be as goofy as she actually is. But she's awesome, and she carries the movie on her shoulders. So after this, she went and did the Shark movie, and she's got some other movies coming out as well. But even though I haven't seen those other movies or the Shark movie, I think she's very proud of this movie, and I think that this is like a really kind of great example of her capabilities.
Cool. All right. Well, thanks so much for sharing.
Thanks for having me, guys.